Well, good morning, everybody. Okay, just another thumbs up that you can hear me. All right. Well, good morning. I don't want to take much of your time. I know that you have a busy agenda, but I did want to just stop in. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all just for a few minutes. Again, my name is Joe Gogachea. I've been serving as the assistant chief for about a month now, and I know I've met some of you that are on the council and worked with you in some cases in past years, and I look forward to working with you some more and meeting those who I haven't yet met. Just a little bit about myself. I've been with the division for about 18 years and have served in a variety of roles. I'm familiar with the council. I've attended meetings in the past. I really do appreciate the important work that you all do, taking time to prepare and approve the state plan and review its implementation. So thanks for all that you do, and I'm here to assist if ever needed. So always feel free to reach out to me. I'm just excited to be part of this team for the division and support you all with the work that you do. So that's all really I had to say this morning. But again, I understand you have a busy agenda, so nice meeting you all, and please never hesitate to reach out if I can ever assist. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we're gonna have it figured out. There we go. That's you.
Sorry about that, Joe.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, IT guy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Heavens gracious.
Grant subcommittee memo?
Yeah, so you remember that we had the subcommittee who worked on the grants. We forwarded that to the assistant chief of the Environmental and Financial Assistance Division, and they have met internally to discuss it a little bit. Our chief, Vlad, is intending to meet with our director along with the assistant chief from DEFA so that they can discuss it with her. So we are working on it internally at this point, and once we know more about where it's going, we'll come back and report to you. I think I sent an email to everybody about ethics training, just has to be done by the end of the year. I know a number of you have already sent me your certificates. I'm sure you had a rip-roaring time with that. So we have to do the exact same one every year. So I appreciate your letting me know that you've completed it.
We allowed to accept bottles of water again yet?
From us?
It's de minimis, I think that's.
Oh.
That's always been.
I have to tell that story. There was a, assistant director, Jim Canepa. He went out to a site inspection one time. The guy offered him a bottle of water and the rest of the staff refused to take it. And he goes, "If you think you can buy me off with a bottle of water, you are sorely mistaken."
Well, I can be bought for a donut.
That's not a bottle of water. No, there's sugar there.
Gotcha. And then I think we might have already talked about it, but we're canceling the December meeting just because it's always such a busy time of the year and weather is. So Merry Christmas early. That's all I have. Chet, did you have anything you wanted to add? Or you?
So just to clarify, I mean, they have the link to all that online training.
Yes, I sent the link, but if people can't find it, let me know and I'll resend it.
So just because I know you can't hear me through the mask and I'm probably violating something here, but I just want to make sure that you don't wait to the very last minute. This is a very important training. All our employees of the agency take this training on an annual basis, and many of you that sit on other boards also are required to take the training again. So, and I apologize for the duplication, but it is something that we have to do. And no, a bottle of water is fine, and as well as a pumpkin donut.
I wait till the last minute, so don't do what I did. So that's all we have, I think, internally. We have April Stevens here I keep always wanting to call you Stevenson. I don't know why that is, but we have April here from the grants program. She's just going to give us kind of a quick update on the grant program. So April, let me pull up your presentation. I actually was able to do that.
You go ahead and that's just a matrix. Well, just a few minutes, everybody. We don't have a ton to talk about, but just wanted to give you a brief update. I know we have talked about the curbside recycling contamination project for years now. The exciting thing is that's pretty much done. So finally done. The toolkit has been posted on the site. And I think the videos So it's available to download. This toolkit is a PDF that has a ton of links that then you can go and it's just full of so much information. I mean, basically the Recycling Partnership put together a step-by-step guide on how to do all of this. So that's available on our website. And Jill Martin from the Recycling Partnership is actually going to do a webinar about this whole project on November 9th at 10 a.m. And you can register for that on our website. So I put the websites on there because you can write them down really quick, but under the epa.ohio.gov/DEPA, and then under training tab, you can actually access all of our webinars there. So you can sign up for the one on November 9th with Jill.
Has there been a specific outreach that's been done for that program?
We just finished, so we're still there. Gathering all of the final details and all of the final numbers. Gahanna was one of our last communities to finish, so we were still kind of getting all that.
No, I mean for
the toolkit.
for this presentation.
Got pulled together.
Okay.
It literally just got posted last Friday.
Okay.
So
I guess my point to that was if there's anybody in this group that can forward that to some of the county commissioners, to the solid waste districts, to the cities, all that kind of stuff. Steve, do you have a contact list with your customers and that kind of stuff?
I can get it, yeah.
That you can try to push that out too,
Yeah.
because I really think we spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
If we can get a bunch of people to
that would be fantastic.
realize the value of that and potentially apply for additional grants to, do some studies and things like that, whatever we can do. I think that
And the
would be great.
results were quantifiable. They very specific changes once that.
Benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry. So last week, there was a conference down in Chillicothe. I don't know if anybody did attend, but that was a good presentation by the Recycling Partnership about the efforts that they had and the toolkit and the video that's coming out. So to your point, Mr. Chairman, we'll work with DEPA, see if we can do a distribution plan in regards to some of the county commissioners, the county association.
I know you guys have your own
Yeah.
listservs and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes when things come out of a listserv like that, they get the,
Very.
yeah.
Chairman, the Ohio Municipal League is the best way to reach municipalities,
Right.
because you're not just reaching administrators where sometimes it just ends there, but you're reaching all of the legislators too,
And
and
we'll,
departments.
and when we talk with you, we'll probably want to discuss, and they know all this, but I mean, we'll want to discuss with their communications managers at those associations. It's been very good contacts for us and sending out information about grants and things like that. To your point, absolutely. When the message comes from them versus us, it has a greater value. People do pay more attention. So, and we will work with the waste industry as well to push it out in their own channels.
And Dave Folks is listening in and wants me to tell you guys that we're going to send multiple email blasts about the kit in the webinar. A few days ago, and then we're going to highlight it at the solid waste management training on November 4th that Demo is doing. So,
You guys do a great job. I wasn't trying to say you don't. It's just we can help a little bit.
no, and that would be amazing if we could get. We obviously like I said we are sending it out. We are marketing the webinar, but if others can share that information, that would be great. We definitely want to get all of the benefits that we can out of this. Speaking of which, and Ernie, if you want to go to the next slide. So the other thing is new is that we've made this a new grant category. So it's its own grant category now. It's called curbside recycling contamination. So with that, it's up to $50,000 to do a similar project like the ones that we did in the pilot studies. So to do the feet on the street, to do the marketing, the mailers, tags, all of that is eligible under this grant category.
That is
And
awesome.
on the website, as you go through the application, we actually ask you, are you intending to use the toolkit? We will be scoring accordingly. If people say no, we're going to want to know why they're not using the toolkit, but we're making sure that they are aware of the toolkit. There's a link to the toolkit on the application, and we're asking them to, we kind of politely asking them to use this information because these are the best management practices that we have put together. So that will be on there. And then one more slide. And then just to give you the schedule. So it's 2 weeks. I think we will be opening up the application process. So it opens on November 1st. We'll be doing our first informational webinar. We always do 2 a year. That'll be the first one will be on the 3rd. And then we'll do another one on January 6th. The review deadline, we do reviews of grants, draft application reviews up to 2 weeks prior to the close of the grant program. So we don't score, but we know what the scores are looking for. So we'll do a review if you ask us and you get it to us before the 21st, we'll review and give feedback on the applications. And then that deadline is February 4th. For businesses with a government sponsor, we give you a week to get all that paperwork in, the financials and that type of stuff. And then as always, the funding for the 2022 grant year starts on July 1st.
Thank you very much.
This is such great news. And April, I appreciate you really listened on the grant subcommittee because we had talked about linking potential projects to expand curbside to this toolkit and the contamination effort. So I just want to applaud you and your team for this. It's really exciting. This is great.
Yeah, we're excited. We hope we get a lot of projects. We'd already gotten a few in the last round, but hopefully we're going to get quite a bit more and then be able to give them this guidance so they know what to do. Yeah. Yes. And we will be we'll be meeting with Director Stevenson on November 2nd. By the way, I know already mentioned to present your feedback. The meeting is November 2nd. We had a hard time getting on their schedule, but we'll be meeting on November 2nd.
So we've been having different associations come in and kind of tell us what it is that they do in terms of the solid waste management field here. So we have the Ohio Organics Council today, who's going to go over their mission and what it is that they're doing in the field. And we have Jason Ziss, who's the president of their organization and also the director of business development at Kurtz Brothers. Jason, are you on there?
I'm here. Hi.
Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to do your presentation for you?
Whatever's easier for you. As long as I can see it, I don't care if you flip it or do you want me to just take over? Makes no difference.
Yeah. If you want to take over, that's fine. It's probably easier that way for you.
Sure. Hold on 1 second.
Thank you, by the way, for doing this for us.
Absolutely. Well, no, I really wanted to thank everybody at the association for letting us come in and talk today. We've been around for a while now, and we kind of work in the same manner of what our objectives are for beneficial reuse and recycling. Our focus is more on organics, but I think that, when we look at your mission and your objectives, organics can play a big role in, helping the state achieve their recycling objectives. So what I want to do here today is we'll just go through this presentation and talk a little bit about the Ohio Organics Council and what we are, what we do. And we were asked to kind of give some recommendations to the group in terms of how we could potentially see opportunities for your group and the influence that they have on the Ohio EPA. So we have some of those recommendations. And then I'd say if we have time left, that we can just open it up to discussions, talk freely, and kind of go from there. Does that sound good?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I am Jason Ziss. I am the president of the Ohio Organics Council. I'm also the business development director for Kurtz Brothers. We're a beneficial reuse company that was located throughout actually the Midwest now, but call Ohio home. The Ohio Organics Council actually was created in 1993 as the Ohio Compost Association. We then switched to the Organics Recyclers Association of Ohio, which is a mouthful and a kind of a weird acronym of ORAO. But in 2019, we officially became a member chapter with the U.S. Compost Council, where we then now changed our name once again to the Ohio Organics Council. So lots of change, but we like where we're at now under the U.S. Compost Council as the Ohio chapter. We like what the U.S. Compost Council brings. We think there's a lot of value there, and we really like the association. So who are we? Well, we are a 501c6 nonprofit trade association, and our mission is really to promote the growth of organics recycling industry in Ohio. We want to do that through further study and research, advancement and development of composting and organics recycling. We do this through education, training, information exchange, and networking with industry professionals, and a lot with the Ohio EPA and different county board of health. So we're made up of 12 directors. Really, the members come from both the public and private sector, but we also have academia, solid waste management professionals, regulatory agencies, and ex aficionados. We do have membership all goes through the USCC. This is different than it was before when we were ORAO. But right now we have 23 members that are primary entities. But right now we're coordinating membership drives with the U.S. Compost Council and looking to grow substantially with their assistance. Some of the members you might be familiar with. These are main players in the organics recycling industry in Ohio. Again, you're probably familiar with some of these businesses. Here's some other additional ones that are members of our fine association. These private sectors players are more actually the hands-on operators of compost facilities, the ones who make and distribute material. Some of these are equipment suppliers, or just people who support the organics industry in general, like Vegware, that they do cutlery that's compostable. But you can see here different public or sector professionals that are members of our association. So in terms of services, what we do, typically, we have a few main services. We provide an annual conference every year in November. So if anybody wants to attend, it is next month. At that session, it's typically an information session on the industry. So we talk about different happenings, technologies are sometimes discussed, but really what's going on in the industry, regulations, how-tos, a whole different group of things. Sometimes, I mean, last year we had sessions on PFAS. We talked about agriculture. So it's a pretty diverse agenda that we put together, but it's been a mainstay of our association, really well attended, and people seem to like it. So we do that every year in November. In addition to that, we have an annual compost tour that we do. So we like to get people out to actual compost facilities so they can see these things for themselves. We do a compost training course, and that's in association with Ohio State, ORADC over there in Worcester, but really helping professionals just, refine their crafts, talk about things that are up and coming in the industry, and really educate people who are trying to get into the industry or young professionals on the benefits, values, and really how to maintain professional composting operations. We also give scholarships out each year. So we were asked to talk about relevant issues that could be relevant to MAC. And, as we want to see organics recycled at higher numbers. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. And I bet your association does too. And in the 2020 solid waste plan, there are goals set for food waste recycling at landfills. And when we talk organics, we're talking all organic biomass sources. So this could be food waste, this could be yard waste, this could be, tree trimmings, any of this stuff. If it's organic in nature, it could have a better second life than simply disposed in landfills. I think landfills are, kind of, tagged here as, a villain. I mean, they're a total necessity in our, in the state. We understand that. But if there's better ways that we can manage products that are sent there, I think it's our responsibility to do that. And then I think that's something that MAC would appreciate and agree with as well. So there's an association out there called ReFed that reported in Ohio that around 1.2 million tons of food waste was landfilled in Ohio in 2019. If you added up all of the Class 2 compost facilities that recycle food waste, so Class 2 compost facilities are really the only ones that are allowed by regulation to recycle food waste. We're really only a drop in the bucket of the potential food waste source that's out there. So yeah, food waste represents a enormous target for solid waste diversion in Ohio. Food waste represents and organics represent 30 to 40% of solid waste streams. So when associates like yourself are collaborating with the EPA and saying, hey, where could we be targeting and looking for low-hanging fruit in terms of increasing recycling rates in the state, I would say, why aren't we talking about organics more? I know some's been done for yard waste, and that's okay. But we have this kind of lack of opportunity targeting in stuff like biomass from food waste. With, if you can see just the estimated rates that we're really returning in terms of recycling for really one of the largest solid waste markets that's out there right now. Well, why? Well, we have a totally underutilized, or not underutilized, underserved infrastructure in the state. These are all the Class 2 composters. It's very, very small. It's very scattered, and this is why we can only service a few percent of the food waste organic mass biomass that's coming out of the state, is because there's just really a limited infrastructure. So why is the infrastructure inadequate and limited? Well, the two largest ones that are currently operating in the state would be the Andre Farms. They're in Northwest Ohio, and Garrick-Capegro, and they do around 10,000 tons a year. So you can see right now that those two facilities represent really a large component of all that's being reclaimed from food waste biomass. And really, you would need a large amount, 60 more of these facilities, to even get to 50% scrap diversion. So when we talk about the infrastructure being adequate, it's completely inadequate. Kurtz Brothers, the company I work for, we have two Class 2 facilities. So I can speak with direct firsthand experience on operations, management, establishment of these facilities, and really, it's not easy. Why? Well, they're expensive. They are not easy to operate, and there's a lot that goes behind it. So you need acreage, which is significant. You get the whole, NIMBY perspective of not in my backyard. Everybody wants to recycle, but organics recycling, well, yeah, I probably wouldn't want to live next to a Class 2 compost facility. Yet we need more of them. So location and acreage is challenge number one. The cost to prepare for a site is extensive. It's not establishing a solid waste landfill expensive, but it does have pretty significant barriers or entries. Equipment to run these facilities are very expensive. Front end loaders, trommels, windrow turners, these are not cheap items. And then also bonding is expensive, can be for these facilities where there's no bonding required for Class 4 facilities. And then regulations. There is significant regulations put on something that's really meant to help the state. Sometimes operators feel that it's more difficult to work in stringent regulations than it's really worth it to do. So I'm not saying that these facilities don't need regulations, but I think sometimes common sense regulations goes out the door with compost facilities. And then, as I mentioned, siting criteria, we could talk a little bit more about that here briefly. But, it's funny, I'm probably preaching to the choir here because these are items that the state solid waste plan identifies as barriers to entries for Class 2 compost facilities. Cost of permitting, constructing, and operating. I mean, so I'm not saying something that you guys and the EPA doesn't already know. And then, the elephant in the room, which I'm sure for your organization as well, really kind of holds back recycling in the state of Ohio, is our low cost of landfills. So it is very, very, very difficult to convince somebody to recycle something if it's cheaper to dispose of it. Unfortunately, I wish that weren't the case. But usually, green comes from dollars. And when it's really simple to throw something away because our landfill rates are very inexpensive, well, people are going to throw it away, especially businesses. if I had a magic wand, I would probably start there. But this has always been a tough subject because of business pushback in the state. But, if we want to make a difference, sometimes we have to strive to do things that are more difficult. So what can be done? I think a lot can be done. And I just took my sister to see Silence of the Lambs for the first time. And just like Hannibal Lecter was saying, it's all in the case files. Well, what can be done is really, it's all in what you guys have already put together in your solid waste plan with the state. It's there. I would, but probably expand on it a little bit. So, this first one, your recycling infrastructure goal, I love it. It's great. You must provide access to recycling opportunities to 80% of the residential population and commercial generators. I just would say, yeah, great, do that. But is the communication and wherewithal there that businesses and residents know what their other option is for recycling? In my experience of working B2B businesses looking to promote recycling, I would say most of the businesses that I talk to about recycling plans really have no idea where they can go for recycling. So that's really what prevents them to do this. So where maybe providing access is important, and maybe you're doing that in 80%, is the communication there so people know about where to go and what they could do if they do have recycling initiatives. I like your waste reduction rate, 25% of the solid waste generated by residential commercial sector. That's great. Do that. And if you're struggling for that, I would say, well, look at where the largest percentage of your solid waste is. And I think you're going to see it's organics. So maybe organics really could and should be the focus of trying to hit that target. Again, I don't know where you are right now in terms of your solid waste diversion rate. I like these too, these short and long-term goals. These are great. Help finance equipments for Class 2 compost facilities and anaerobic digesters. We like the grant programs that are put out. The market development grant, those are very good. Those are helpful. I don't know how much anaerobic digesters are going to benefit from the grant because it's capped at a $250,000 limit. So I think if you really wanted to, incentivize something that could cost $10 million, maybe you need something that might be a little bit higher than $250,000. But expanding this and maybe targeting this a little bit more for what you want to do might be a way to go. I know the Biden administration right now is really pushing for the increase of compost facilities, and some of the federal government is I think they're up to $5 million per facility grant. Now granted, I get it, that's the federal government and not the state of Ohio. But I guess maybe look at, what is it that you want to achieve from the grants, and is that monetary compensation through the grants enough to incentivize the directives that you're looking for? I love private-public partnerships. I think those are great ways to incentivize businesses to act in a role that maybe they wouldn't. Again, if it's difficult for businesses to make money at something, then they're not going to do it. But if there's a way that state initiatives can be tied with private expertise and know-how, then those should be sought. I love P3s and P4s. I think they're ways that states can really achieve their objectives that they're looking for. I don't know, in my opinion, I don't know how much you're going to be successful with loan programs to support composting facilities. Lending right now is reasonably cheap. I'd ask the group, how much are you actually loaning to set up new compost facilities? If it's small, then I'd probably say it's ineffective. So look at that. This other one that you put out is a really, really good one, which I recommend here later on, kind of capitalizing on. But more state programs need to see how they could kind of kill two birds with one stone and try to achieve their mission by also solving the mission of other state initiatives. So brownfield revitalization program. There are tons of brownfields throughout the state of Ohio. Can the use of organics or be used to help close out old brownfield sites, or those Class 2 compost facilities be sited at old industrial facilities? That those are ideal, they're large, that usually have infrastructure in place. And they're usually typically in good access to highways, which is productive. But again, I don't see the brownfield group kind of looking at any type of cross-utilization of associations to help kind of solve those problems, or connect the dots is maybe a better term. But I like that. I like that long-term component that was put out in the solid waste plan. Gross here. Okay. So what can the state do? So further ideas, like I said, I would personally expand the grant program, leverage more funds, and be a little bit more targeted. As I said, focus on organics. One bigger objective that maybe you could do, I mean, personally, I'd just love to ban organics altogether. Again, everybody's probably chuckling like, oh, that's too hard of an ask. But again, it's done in other states. Why not here? It could and should be done, or just increase the fees on organics going to landfill, and then use those fees for grant programs or education. Either way, if we somehow can curb the mentality of businesses or municipalities, and use it more on an economic driver, you'll get the quickest change that you're trying to strive for. And if you can't do it through those type of things, maybe you can incentivize businesses. So maybe there's some type of incentive program that you can create for businesses to really incentivize them to do more organics recycling if they're generating that material. So then it's not so much you're forced to do it, but there's an initiative to do it. Incorporate further use of organics in such state programs as ODOT, brownfields, and agriculture. Again, this is more cross collaboration with other state agencies to see how organics could be better incorporated. So what I mean by this is, again, a private sector business like myself, we wouldn't jump into organics recycling if we didn't have a need, or we knew that there wasn't some type of profit potential for it. I mean, to be quite frank, and you're either going to get that from paid in feedstocks or paid out products. And I mean, this is nothing new to anybody, but so, the groups and associations like yours or the Ohio EPA can help incentivize that, either through pushing material to these facilities, as I've just mentioned, with incentivizing businesses or making it harder to dispose of organics, or you can help on the demand side of the organics. So we do a lot of work with ODOT, and ODOT has programs for where they allow the use of compost for planting media along roadsides. But why couldn't we do a minimum percentage of inclusion of compost, or things where ODOT is required to use compost, which is better than soils for planting, where at the end of the day, using soils or compost that have high organic content just provide better sociological benefits, such as stormwater runoff management, better vegetation. The benefits go on and on. Same thing with agriculture. I mean, we have this huge underserved industry throughout Ohio. It's our largest industrial sector that really doesn't use compost at all. Why? It's just not there. It's not available. And more people are used to using synthetic fertilizers than really organic sources. That's better for agriculture. It's better for soils. And oh, by the way, it helps manage this terrible thing that we're dealing with in the lake, which is algae blooms from nutrient migration. So simply providing that infrastructure, or allowing more businesses to establish and operate in that vicinity, could create more organic recycling sources in parts of Ohio. Brownfields I talked about. I really like the idea of tying in old blight properties with new means for recycling, especially organics. But it's just where, again, people just typically don't want these around them. But if we could be selective with opportunities, and maybe that's a brownfields program that they're saying targets like, hey, if you meet these XYZ qualifications of size, location, infrastructure, maybe they would can go to an association like ours and say, would this property make sense for what you're trying to achieve? Cross collaboration through programs, that could be a really good benefit. And then simply, I've said this before, but really targeting residential organics would make a lot of sense. Like I understand targeting contamination in curbside. Like that's a big problem. It for sure is. But maybe a better target is, how do we get municipalities to start curbside organic recycling? And then when you hear back from all the limitations that they have with establishing that, then maybe that's where time and attention and money is spent to help breach that gap for municipalities to establish that. Because if we really wanted to move mountains and really recycle volumes, that's the target. It's residential organics. So I said a lot, and I said it pretty quick, so I'm sorry. But that's the end of my presentation. So I guess I could open it up or kind of turn it over to you guys.
So Jason, we have a question. One of our.
Hello there, Jake. I am the rep. And so you're talking my language right to me. And one of the big issues that municipalities have is that yard waste, the haulers have a difficult time having enough people picking it up because there's so many residentials that are putting out so much yard waste that it sometimes it blows away the haulers, okay? And so it's left for another day or another day or another day or another day. And which office are you in with Kurtz Brothers?
I'm in the Cleveland division.
But which office?
It's in Independence.
Independence. I'm in Avon Lake.
Oh, okay, sure.
Avon facility. And I'm close to the digester. I'm not far from the digester. It's still in my county that you have. And a couple questions that I have. I believe that the residents are really informed about the yard waste and the composting, and they would be willing to purchase compost because of the efforts of LEAP, L-E-A-P, that's in the northeastern part of Ohio, and also the garden clubs that are throughout Ohio. I believe that there's a huge market to purchase and to utilize that on a residential basis. But I think that your larger market is going to be for municipalities. Now, the municipality that I'm in, they already take their own leaves off the streets. They already have compost in, and they reuse them, and they give them out free, which is a competition for what you're doing. My question is, with food, are you making contacts with the restaurants and with the grocery stores and with the universities and the schools for food use?
Yes, and there's plenty of those generators around. Typically, the more hands that are generating the material, the harder it is to keep it clean. So cafeterias are one of the more difficult ones. But yeah, I mean, anybody who's generating that material, typically manufacturers or some of these smaller restaurants, those are some of the lower hanging targets for food waste. And then I would say then take the step up to cafeterias and schools. But the volume is going to be in the residents. And like you said, I think there's a big desire to recycle organics, because people can really do that at their house and they can feel good about contributing. But the lack of infrastructure on the commercial side through municipalities is where that kind of ends. So, I think where you started was a really good target opportunity to focus. If commercial haulers can't make it work for them economically, then maybe that's where the incentives or initiatives of this group and then to the Ohio EPA should be the focus.
I'll interrupt you a second. The reason that they're having problems is that they have a shortage of CDL drivers. Okay, that's where the shortage is. So because it's a third trip. Okay, so that's where the shortage is. I wanted to ask you: is there are you handling the Zupu? They sell it as Zupu.
We do not.
Okay. Is there a way to mix to reduce the odorous the odors that come out? Because we are in municipalities receiving complaints about that. And I was wondering if there's technology that can help to control it.
Zoo poop specifically, or just in general organics? I'm sorry, you cut out.
Others out of your areas where you're composting. Is there a way to control?
So good operators are able to manage the odors, according to the regulations and the state. But odors are subjective. So that's why siting these facilities in locations that make the most sense, not behind a residential development, is really kind of the challenge behind this, but where I think that a lot of collaboration through other state agencies could help in that sector. Are you ever going to eliminate odors completely at organics recycling locations? Like, no. I think digesters have an odor to them where, compost facilities certainly do. But I don't think it's any more than wastewater treatment plants, and those are all over the place. So I think you need just good operators that are following, the programs and best management practices, and you can cohabitate.
Thank you.
I beg your pardon?
Hi, I'm Beth Biggins-Rammer. I'm with the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. And I wanted to share a couple of things. I agree with you that I think before you ask for the demand, the infrastructure needs to be there. We have just completed an analysis for a private company looking for brownfields within Cuyahoga County. We have plenty of them. It's just that the size of those brownfields border on not being large enough. We have plenty that are like in the 5 to 7 acre size, but we don't have a plethora of things that are 10 to 25 acres. And in an urban area where you're going to have the density and the potential to collect that intense volume, that's an issue. In Cuyahoga County in particular, a goodly number of the brownfields are owned through the land bank because they've been orphaned over the years. So the opportunity to procure that land really is just tied to some old back taxes. We get it as is. But to your point, the cost for the infrastructure to begin dealing with in specific food waste is, rather staggering. And that is something I don't know whether we can look at the state level. And the numbers are beyond what would be able to be assisted by any solid waste district. You're talking 10 million. Well, I can tell you we don't remotely have that kind of money in our fund balance, let alone, the opportunity to get our hands on it. So as you were speaking, one of the things I was thinking about, and I guess I would present this to this group to ponder, is there is OWDA funding available for solid waste projects. However, that has to be, done by a solid waste district. Could there be some kind of funding mechanism that's very similar to the OWDA?
OWDA.
I'm sorry, Ohio Water Development Authority.
Okay.
Those are funds that are available to solid waste districts for development of solid waste facilities. And specific, the idea was that it would mitigate, water pollution.
Grant or loan?
Loan. low interest loans, usually over the term of 20 years. And, but it needs to be done by a public sector entity, solid waste districts, for example. Sewer districts obviously take advantage of that funding also. But I didn't know if somehow you're talking about this collaboration, can that kind of money or similar be made available for, private sector entities?
There is a program through the air quality, Iowa Air Quality, what's the last? Development Authority. I've used it. You can use it. It's conduit funding. With solid waste, it's a little bit not as good as it could be because they can give you sales tax exemptions for all your purchases for equipment and things of that nature, but they can also give you property tax exemptions for all the development that's put together for that solid waste handling, pavement, buildings, all that kind of good stuff. So it does have some long-term benefits. It's conduit funding, so you basically bring your own bank to the program. If you're a small business, they grant some of the cost of the process because it can cost $20,000 or $30,000 just in the paperwork to get it done. So it's a cool program, but it's a loan program and you got to pay it back. So Jason, I have a question for you, okay? This group is an interesting group. We have some influence, and I will say just that way, influence on the state solid waste management plan. The state solid waste management plan is not necessarily a regulatory structure. It is a goal-oriented structure. So when we do anything, we have to sell it to the people that are going to use it to make that happen. The contamination program or the contamination grant program that you referenced was all parties involved needed that to happen because we had made such a large investment from a public sector perspective, from a private sector perspective, from a goal perspective, that everybody was engaged and it could make us money or save us money by doing that. This group has, since it got put back together, has been primarily focused on mutually beneficial endeavors with a cost benefit to them, not a cost increase, but a cost benefit to them. So my challenge to you is, what type of program can your group come up with that can be cost beneficial to the municipalities, not a cost increase? While I understand a lot of recycling programs are cost increases, we can't afford them right now. You have considerable increasing cost. You have considerable cost increases from transportation because we physically can't find the drivers to drive down the street again. You have a problem in finding locations to do this kind of stuff. For all intents and purposes, the Class 2 facilities that I saw around the state do very minimal food waste recycling at their locations now. So my question is, what could you find as a program that is mutually beneficial to the cities, whether that be a cost increase that's voluntary because we have people that want to do it, kind of the social benefit of it, that could be incorporated potentially into the next plan, could be referenced to a idea that could be pushed out to some of the associations, whether it be the cities, the counties, or whatever. But in today's day and age, there are a lot of people that mandate things, in my opinion. Ohio is not one of them. Okay? We don't, because of the cost of landfills, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's not going to happen, period. So we have to figure out a way to get there without doing it the way everybody else does it. We have to do it the Ohio way. So my challenge to you is just that. How do you figure out how to do it the Ohio way? And what pilot program, small project program, what does your group have a suggestion on? And you can come back to us and talk to us about that again, that we may be able to help you put our support behind, figure out how to work with the agency that said this is all beneficial. All the changes that we did through the state solid waste management, state solid waste plan were mutually beneficial. We didn't do anything that nobody agreed on. We weren't forcing things on the public side, weren't forcing things on the private side. That was the goal.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. But that was great. And I welcome that challenge, and we would love to go back as an association and talk about maybe a creative opportunity program that we can bring back to your association. So happy to do so. I will challenge you though. Just because it's Ohio's way doesn't mean it's the right way. Okay. There are so many other examples throughout our country of other states doing better. And I just say, just because we're doing it here, why is it so insurmountable that we can't do and have big changes? I'd say, well, we're just not thinking big enough. But let's start with what you asked. Let's bring it back to our group. I'm happy to. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments, questions?
I have a quick comment, Jason, Steve Sargent on the committee. You did talk a lot about the end markets, and I think it's really important to have a completely circular program. So can you absorb, if you increase the supply of material going through your system, can the market today absorb that end product that you generate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'd say yes. Can the market absorb it? Partially, but that's where I was going earlier about if we could create a better demand for a very multi-beneficial product, then that would spur the business development that you're really looking for. I would rather have programs tied to the use of organics in the state than I'd rather have loans. If there was an end demand for products, such as on ODOT projects, I would rather have a mandate for ODOT projects. Again, I mandate, I know. But if there was that type of demand that, hey, we need to increase organic matter content in soil that's used back on highways, and you do that through ODOT, that would probably cause more of a market demand for compost, therein creating more recycling facilities than there would be from ever just having a loan program at low interest rates. So yeah, I'd rather have the market pushing that. The current industry supports what's available in the market, but if we had more, you would have more recycling for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Jason?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you all very much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Good work, everybody. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda,
Got a cancellation, so we'll be moving on to the HHW portion next. So that would be me first. And I just did want to mention that Marcy Kress is also on the same, and I'm sorry.
It's okay, we changed.
The Ohio Organic
The Ohio
Recycling?
Organic Council.
Okay, is also on the board for that, so she's also very knowledgeable about what's going on there. I'm sure she'd be happy to share information with you as well. So just to give a little background on this, we had one of our staff members had put in a suggestion to the director that it's very difficult for residents in Ohio to find outlets for their household hazardous waste. And so that was kind of the impetus for the presentation that I'm going to give you here. We had met with the director to kind of present, to frame the issue for her and kind of show her what's going around the state, and then try to come up with some potential things that we can do with the state to help with that. So just in terms of the overview, that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to frame the issue. I'm going to talk about some challenges, some available opportunities. There are a lot of solid waste districts doing stuff in the state, so I'm going to show you some examples of 5 different ways that they do that. There are some other collection programs, and then again, we'll talk about opportunities that we have at the state to try to at least help a little bit. So just to frame the issue, I mean, I think most people know there's lack of statewide access for residents for HHW collection opportunities. A lot of them are just one-stop options. So, we know that you can take used oil to certain places, you can take batteries to other places, but it requires a big commitment on the part of a resident to travel all over the place and take one thing here and one thing there. And even like some of the companies that provide it, like Home Depot, it may not be universal around the state. So it is a commitment on residents to figure out how to do that. And again, available options are not often convenient, so residents may have to drive a long way to get there. Again, there's no one-stop place for a lot of people. You have to take something here and there. And again, it does require that commitment. The other issue is that even when there are available options, it's very difficult to find out about them. So, where are you supposed to look for them? Even on a specific company's webpage, I've run into the problem where they'll say the corporate side, we do this, but then if you go to an individual store, they don't. So, where is information posted? I mean, it's just, there's so many different places that have information and it's not necessarily all correct because it's out of date or it's conflicting. And then in a lot of cases, disposal and trash is the only option that residents have. And it's really probably a better option than other things they might come up with, but residents don't want to do that. So, there's a lot of solid waste districts that have how do I types of things on their website that will help people find stuff. But I don't think a lot of people know they're in a solid waste district. So, it's just a matter of how do you get information out to people. So when you look at it, really, there's local challenges. The burden generally falls on local governments to try to provide a solution to people. So we're talking about solid waste districts. They may have limited funding. It's very expensive to collect household hazardous waste. We're going to show you that here in a little bit, and Marcy will talk about that as well. What some districts spend on collecting HHW is more than other districts get as revenue in a year. A lot of times the solid waste districts do not have dedicated staff to the solid waste district. So it could be an administrative person who is assigned to running the solid waste district. So they don't have the physical ability to do it. Even when it's offered, a lot of times it is inconvenient to residents. There's limited awareness, like I mentioned, about the collection events. And then they're often available only to that one solid waste district's residents. So Columbus has a permanent facility, but only Franklin County residents can use it. I did kind of a search to find out solid waste districts report to us annually in terms of what they do. I looked at those annual reports to find out what is being done around the state, and 36 out of our 52 are doing some type of a collection program for their residents. When you look at it, there are 16 solid waste districts representing 20 counties that have some kind of a permanent or semi-permanent. There are one-day events that you could see they range from a one-day event, sometimes twice a year, sometimes once a year, sometimes it's every other year, every 3 years, every 5 years. So you can see that what districts are doing already around the state. So we've got a lot of people trying. So let me just I'm going to go over 5 different ways that solid waste districts do their collection and show you what it involves. So the first one is North Central Ohio Solid Waste District. We refer to it as the claw because it looks like it's clawing onto Logan in all ways. They're a 6-county solid waste district, and they have collection facilities in Allen, Shelby, and Union counties that residents can go to. And then they have a mobile unit that travels around in the other 3 counties. It's available from April till October. Residents have to make an appointment in order to participate. And the district does charge residents at least $1 per pound to take stuff. So it does not have to be a free opportunity. I mean, there is a cost. So when you look at it, we get the tons collected from their annual district report. We get the costs that they spend from the quarterly fee reports they submit to us. So that's where I got this information. So in 2020, they collected almost 11 tons at a cost of $56,000, which per ton is $5,600. So when you're talking about a landfill fee of $34 and recycling processing costs of $90, there you go. The next one is Geauga Trumbull Solid Waste District. So they're up in Northeast Ohio. They have a one-day collection in Geauga County. They have a collection facility in Trumbull County that again is open basically during the summer hours. They are constructing one in Geauga County, but the constructed is over $1 million. In 2020, through their program, they collected 29 tons at a cost of $57,000, which cost per ton is $1,498. Some of the difference in the cost depends on how they do it. So if you contract with a contractor, it's a lot more expensive than if you use district staff. I believe Geauga Trumbull may use some district staff, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Hamilton County has a one-day collection event. Again, they require registration and nobody knows where the collection is going to be until you register. So they don't want, it's a management thing. People, when they open this up, will get tons of people coming and people have to wait 4 and 5 hours sometimes. It is a management issue. So to control that, they don't tell anybody where it is until they've registered. And they do it through a contract with Clean Harbors. So in 2020, they collected 55 tons at a cost of $128,000, $2,300 per ton. Cuyahoga County has a different setup. So they have it set up so individual communities do their own collection from residents. The community then delivers the material to a district-owned central facility. Tell me if I get this wrong, Beth. The solid waste district pays for transportation and treatment or disposal. The community pays for the actual collection event itself. And then in 2020, they had 48 out of 59 communities participate. So
in this particular case, your cost per ton does not include the collection
Correct.
because it's covered by.
correct. So for them, they collected 185 tons at a cost of almost $300,000. Cost per ton is $1,600. Again, that does not include the community costs for doing that. Last one I'm going to show you is Adams Claremont. So it is our only non-contiguous solid waste district in the state. They have a voucher program, which is basically open to Claremont County residents only because they have to travel to Cincinnati to recycle to take their HHW. So people from Adams obviously are not going to travel all the way over. And even to get Claremont residents it's a big load for them. So they had 115 vouchers issued in 2020. They collected 0.59 tons at a cost of $3,700, so it amounted to over $6,000 per ton. So you can see how expensive that it is to provide these kind of opportunities. So when you look at a cost per ton, you can kind of see where it ranges here. In general, the more convenient it is, the more expensive it costs. Although again, in Cuyahoga's case, that's because you don't see the other costs in there. Marcy's going to go over reworks in just a little bit. So there are other options in the state. Obviously, I've already mentioned that there are retailers that do take certain things back. As I've mentioned, when you go into the store, it's usually not obvious where they're collecting it from. They collect very limited materials. Home Depot in Columbus and Home Depot up in Cleveland may not both do it. So, and then there are mail-in services for people who are really willing to pay for it. So Waste Management has mail-in for fluorescent light bulbs and e-waste. Green Disc, which is, we used to use this in the agency, their Technotrash program, it was for things like anything basically that was computer-oriented, CDs, videotapes, all that kind of stuff. And then Call to Recycle, which does batteries. You pre-purchase a box and processing and shipping, you fill it up and then you send it back to them. But again, it's not inexpensive. For a resident, it takes a very long time to fill that container up. So if in the meantime, they discontinue your program, there you go. So in terms of our opportunities from a statewide perspective, our most accessible tool is our webpage. So we can help get information out better. Again, most people don't want to visit EPA's website, or obviously for those of you who've been on our website, it's not necessarily easy to find the information. But so we have a searchable directory on our website that our Environmental and Financial Assistance group maintains. We're going to make sure that that's kept up to date. The problem with it, of course, is the more you stuff put in there, the more harder it is to keep updated. So it's kind of a catch-22. We do provide, we have an interactive map on our website, as well as a static list of all the contacts for solid waste districts. We keep that up to date as much as we can. And then we used to do this before solid waste districts had their web pages. We compiled a list of everything that was going around the state and made that available in our web page. We quit doing that because solid waste district, it's better for people to go to the district web page. But in order to at least help get the word out, we'll have a list with links to the information on your web page. That's the short-term stuff that we can work on. In terms of our future tools, so we're going to try to, in the past, the Northeast district, before everybody had their own collection program, had kind of a collaborative where they would contract for a waste service for multiple solid waste districts and get a better deal. So we're going to look at trying to foster collaboration amongst solid waste districts, whether it would be something like that, or maybe more things like where one district has a collection event and you would have residents go and the district would then pay for their resident. It's gonna take money, let's be honest. And so, is there a way we can have a statewide dedicated grant program, kind of like we do with the scrap tire program? Or maybe we could use recycling and litter prevention grants. The problem with that is that a lot of HHW is disposed, so it's either treated or burned in an incinerator. This is a program for recovery, so it doesn't necessarily fit with that model. And ultimately, I mean, we need producer responsibility. But as Michael mentioned, we're Ohio, we're not going to mandate that. But at least if those kind of talks come up, they come up periodically, we can be as supportive as we can about that. So, I mean, that's where we are at this point. Like, we have an internal work group trying to work on this, presenting a plan on a page to the director in terms of what we intend to do moving forward. Yeah, Matt.
What are your last two pictures of Beacon Cove?
Well, the one is Wonder Woman's golden lasso.
That's what,
And the other one is a car that floats. I'm not that clever.
Hold it up.
I'm not that clever. That's what I could come up with.
The
So
clip art game is weak.
as is my management of technology, correct?
No, the presentation is wonderful.
Oh, so that's what we presented to the director, and then she charged us with coming up with a plan on a page. And we're meeting again every now and then with DEPA to try to figure that out, and we'll be working a little bit more to try to get a longer term solution so we can come up with one. So, unless anybody has questions for me. Good, that's because I did such
I have a
a,
question. I don't know if this is for you, Ernie, maybe Chet. This. You cited, potentially using an existing grant program, even if it doesn't fit perfectly into that. Would that require a statutory change to use some funding from another grant program for a purpose which is not specifically defined?
The grant program is defined in the Ohio Revised Code. Don't have that with me. But it does specify what the grant funds can be for. So I would have to go back to the law. So typically it's things that would be kept out of the landfill and things that can be recycled or litter or the consuming goals. So, and if you give me 3 minutes, I'm sure Dave Folks will be typing something into the chat. Dave Folks, type something into the chat because he's watching and Googling everything. But, and we presented that to the director, like Ernie said, and we already are doing these cleanup events. We do fund events where they do collect things like that as well, but it's typically with other things. So we can kind of bundle it. But using the grant funds for a standalone also has those weeks might be outside of it.
And Mr. Chairman, I would not be in favor of that because you'll cannibalize the entire recycling and litter prevention grant program. Those disposal costs are off the charts. It doesn't make sense to me.
The question that came to my mind was, do we have a problem in search of a solution or a solution in search of a problem? Because I know that residents want to be able to recycle them, which is fine, but is it causing a problem if they don't? I guess becomes the question.
Well, I think it varies based on your locale within the state. I mean, for example, in Cuyahoga County or some of the more urban areas, we see, because of the heavy industry, we see mercury and we'll see other odd chemicals that I don't know what is the fascination. If you've been worked in some type of factory that you take these types of things home and you put them in your basement or out in your shed. And then these things, as the homeowner ages out and, we get these, we still, because we have such an old housing stock within our county, and I'm certain in other areas of the state, just get these very strange, very dangerous chemicals that residents really don't have any idea how to deal with. We recently, because believe it or not, did have on the outskirts at one time agriculture. We recently got a very pernicious, it was a pesticide in, and cost us a small fortune, came in through our programming, cost us a small fortune to mediate. So I think there should always be some type of outlet. You know, again, I'm not certain that, you know, people are breaking our doors down. And the more typical things, I think we should push towards, you know, producer responsibility. You know, don't overbuy your latex. You know, if there are batteries, you know, the producers need to think of some way to take those back in particular, because that's a growing industry. So I think it's kind of there's almost a divide between, I don't want to say the more simplistic, more recent household hazardous waste items, and some of the things that are still just, I think, going to continue to percolate, no pun intended, to the top that are left from generations ago. So I think you could almost view it as a two-parter.
Well, the other thing is that, I mean, it's one of the most visible ways solid waste districts make themselves available to their residents, and county commissioners like it because it makes them look good. So districts have pressure from people beyond them to provide things too. So county commissioners like them, if I'm right. So.
Well, and I guess my only point to that is a lot of times we tried to take a one size fits all approach, even though there's multiple different things for solid waste districts. But this sounds like a something that one size doesn't fit all under any stretch of the imagination. And it sounds like there are, like you said, there's a divide. There's a primary purpose of like we heard about last time or the time before about lithium ion batteries. So that's kind of a complete separate problem that is a huge issue for our system. So I guess that's, I don't know what the solution is, but let's just make sure that we're concentrating on something that we get the biggest benefit for what we're doing. And maybe it is an urban prioritization of, hey, this is where we need to be.
I have a question, Jennifer, with municipalities. How do we connect with corporations that I'm going to call chemical separators? That they take the end of what you are collecting and they separate it out into marketable chemistry particulates that can be resold and reused in industry. How do we get them more involved? Or what we're collecting isn't of much use to them? I don't know the answer.
We utilize an RFP process to get hazardous waste contractors to bid on our services. And I'm sure other solid waste districts do the same. They just have, like you mentioned, not one size fits all, but that's how, and we've had a program for 26 years. We've seen some cycles where we get 5 applicants and we've seen some where we get 1. So it just depends on what you're asking of them and how they're able to manage the material at an expense at what the services are being requested.
So I'm going to give an example. In an area that I'm familiar with, a manufacturer's rep died suddenly, and the company that he was repping had already moved on, and his wife was left with a basement full of perfume, little bottles of perfume. And she ended up contacting the solid waste management district that put her in contact with Chemtron, and they found that there was something in that perfume that manufacturers need and want. So they were able to separate it out. And I found that just to be fascinating because there was a financial end result there for somebody that wanted what we would consider an HHW, right? So I didn't know if that happened often or if that was a rarity.
We can only take residential by regulations. So if anybody comes to us that is a non-residential, a school, a church, a business, direct them directly to the contractors, how we proceed. I believe that's a similar infrastructure because they have that expertise. HHW is a whole different thing. It's not regulated, it's solid waste. But when you get those businesses, we can't accept them through our programs anyway. So we want to facilitate connecting them. And it is a unique circumstance where they were able to find value in it. And I'm glad that happened. But I know as a resource, we are always connecting businesses with the private industry who manages the material. I'm sure similar districts.
Thank you.
The state has standing contracts that other local agencies can use, correct?
It's all.
Each state contract?
Yeah, like the buying contract for it's an already pre-approved, you can buy from this source, that kind of stuff.
Purchasing fund.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, through DA.
we do.
yeah.
You mean competitive bidding?
Yeah. So you're trying to do it at the local level, at the local solid waste district level. Is there a point that we go to DAS and ask if there could be a state contract put together that the local solid waste management districts could elect to use or not use, but you may get more,
A better rate.
a better rate,
Economy of scale.
and then it applies in theory statewide. Transportation is going to be a different story, but
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I mean, the concept of actually doing, what we're attempting to do in this project is to try to facilitate collaboration between solid waste districts. Reason for that is that obviously if you had 5 solid waste districts coming together with one contract, the cost of that contract would go down. And I think that's where you're trying to get to, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's obviously worth a conversation with our DAS contact to see whether or not that's a viable option and what the process would look like there.
I mean, the state's got hazardous waste that they get rid of now anyway. So maybe it's a tack on to something that they've got on a contract already.
And they already have a waste contract, so they're familiar with that. But to your point, going back a little bit of ways in the conversation, to your point, Mr. Chairman, I mean, there is no one size fits all for Ohio, almost for anything. I mean, Ohio is a big state. I mean, if you've ever been on a campaign or some project that involves you traveling to 88 counties, you realize very quickly that Ohio is very different states, all in one. And so I don't think our attempt is to ever have that one size fits all for every county. But, the lithium ion battery issue is a big issue. But to us, it's a household hazardous waste issue. And so if we don't have the infrastructure for HHW, we don't have it for the batteries. And it's the same thing. So we're really just trying to see whether or not we can build up that capacity and the infrastructure to be able to collect this and have an outlet for it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I think the DAS conversation is a worthy conversation. I think that would allow for some options. I think many local governments are familiar with state purchasing and the process. And so they would be used to that if they don't already have a Cuyahoga County or Summit County, as their service provider. So definitely we'll check into that.
I think that HHW, that's unique for me in my experience, is that when those calls came into us, those people were willing to transport it themselves across a district line to get it to the proper location. I like where you're going with that. Maybe the regional spots that could be quoted, that if somebody that lives in Circleville could drive to Chillicothe, that'd be great. It's a little bit longer, but I want to do the right thing.
And you want it out of your basement.
Exactly. And Beth, you're dead on the issue. She's dead, but I mean, as our population migrates, we're seeing that material's ending up in the back of the garbage trucks sometimes. But people just don't know what to do with it. And cleaning out of somebody passing away, things like that,
And maybe Marcy alluded to the fact that, a number of years ago, in Northeast Ohio, we did have a HHW consortium, and it was a variety of solid waste districts came together. Gosh, I'm gonna say it's like 6 solid waste districts that came together. Some were multi-county districts, and we put a bid out. That was in the day when, the norm was having these twice a year mobilized collections at your fairground. And that did help drive the pricing down. It did take some orchestration because, in that bid document, if you have, let's say, 6 counties, then you need to kind of lay out this calendar of when we hope to have these collection events. Now, you could of course have a more permanent type location where these are collected now, but that kind of prototype, I want to say we went through,
That was several years ago. Trying to remember.
yeah, I want to say it was well over 6 years that we were together.
Why'd you get away from it?
The reason we got away from it was because, and in all honesty, it was kind of Northeast Ohio, more of an urbanized area. The demand for more frequent collection pushed us. You know, the twice spring fall collection, each one of us were getting pressure from a variety of outside sources that I've got a soccer game from 9 to noon on that Saturday that you're gonna be at the fairgrounds, can't make it. What do you mean? I now have to hold on to it for another 6 months. So, and if you look at those that had been involved at all, Marcy was, Summit County, Lorraine County, we've all migrated to more of a permanent, more frequent collection. But that doesn't mean that that might not benefit some of the other areas of the state. So,
Well, and there are portions of the state like Southeast Ohio don't have any contractors that operate in the area, so they don't have the option of even contracting with somebody, or they pay out the nose to get it to travel. So,
Well, like Steve said, if we have a contract with somebody that's in 3 counties away and somebody wants to go do it, then you can offer that as a service to somebody. So I don't know, just.
I like this idea and enlarging the conversation. DAS on the maybe semi-permanent or permanent regional drop locations. The chemical separation, I think that we could get in contact with my friend Jed Klein, who runs Ohio Chemistry Technology Council. For members are people like Dow Chemicals. So in business, we need predictability in the supply chain, which we don't have at all right now. And we're feeling it. But I wonder if we had this regional system and then you could get actors like Dow Chemical or some other larger private enterprise, if they knew they had a semi-predictable stream of materials, that might attract their interest.
So there's a middle person, okay? Before Dow can use it or Lubrizol or someone else, because we have a lot of chemical companies in the community where I serve, and I've had these conversations with them. They need almost medical purity of whatever, you name the ingredient. So the middle person who does the separating
Is the process.
is the processor,
Okay.
correct? So you need the processor to get it to the Dows, the Lubrisols, and the others.
Maybe, and again, if we're talking to DAS, let's dial in Chemistry Technology Council. And I don't know if their membership also includes processors. I think it might. Again, just enlarging the conversation, I think is really in a general sense of why we exist. And this is, an exciting opportunity.
The EPA knows who these processors are, like the Chemtrons of the world and Ross and that. They know the end game and middle.
we're kind of all
Yeah,
behind. So we have one comment from online, but then we have another representative online who needs to present. So it's good conversation. I just want to make sure we're moving forward. So if you'll
We had a comment from Michelle Balls of Henry County, said they're reaching less than 1% of their population with their HHW program, and they often pay more disposable product than the resident paid to purchase.
So we have Marcy Kress here. We are lucky because Marcy wears 2 hats on our council. She works with Reworks as our executive director. So she's also on the Organics Recycling Association of Ohio.
Yeah.
I get that? Okay. So Marcy's going to tell us about Reworks, very long-standing program.
Yes.
So you just tell me when you want me to go forward.
Just a little bit about Summit, you all know what we're located like. I think the most important thing about this is how long our county is. We're talking about providing services to all your residents. We have a very long county. And just want to tell you, we do a bunch of things, and in the consideration of solid waste districts, I have to say we are unique. We are uniquely situated, so we understand what we provide. We have circumstances that allow us to provide it at this level. I don't think all solid waste districts have that opportunity, so I want to make sure clearly state we feel very fortunate to be able to provide and for HHW, but these are also our other responsibilities. If you're managing the budget, that has to be a component of lots of ER generation fee. We have some requirements we have to pay for grant and landfill closure, but I want to show what our operating budget was approximately annually. So $2.80, but we have to operate all of these programs on. We have been in existence for 26 years, and there are a number of things we've learned throughout this process, just a number. And we could go out for pizza and I could talk to you for hours. Part of the reason why I have this job is because I came in to manage this facility, and it has taken many, many turns, and there are a lot of factors involved. And I won't be able to go into a lot of things, but I want you to know that you're having this discussion. I'm happy to share all the things that we've learned. It's just a lot of things operating the way we do now is because of historical. So in 1994, we had 2 collections out there, and they were the first one ever in our agency. Of course, Solid Districts was created in 93, and Ernie went the next stage. And when you have helicopters that fly over your event to get aerial shots of how far back your traffic is, it tends to lead to change. So this was one of the sites that we had. It was inundated, and we were very fortunate enough that after this collection event, Ernie, if you don't mind, our board of trustees quickly moved to make us a permanent solution. And within 2 years, we had a permanent facility. We're the first in the state of Ohio. Been in existence since 1996. They were located a little bit down up there. Although it's not centralized, I can tell you it's located right next to an interstate, and that makes a significant difference. So there's no perfect place in Summit County to get everybody, but this has served, the population density around there is fairly high. So there's a lot of thought of where we would put this. And again, we're going on our we just ended our 26-year operation. So they moved very quickly on this decision. That is our site. We talk about the need for site location. Long driveway was clearly one of them. But I can go into all that. It is very small. The building was actually created for around 150 cars. We've exceeded 150 cars since the day we were open. So I'm actually in the process of trying to expand this. That's a different story. But that is what our site looks like in Summit County for household hazardous waste. It's an 80 by 30 building. There's a close-up of it. You can hit the next space bar, Ernie. I show you that we were in place in 1996 and a condo association built next to us. So we were in place first. Hopefully that indicates our ability to operate safely, but you can see how absolutely close we are to neighbors. They like the look of our wildflower field. We try to maintain our grounds fairly well, but they moved in next to us. So we are that close to condos and apartments. Here's a couple shots of what it looks like. It's in the loading area. The inside of our building, again, not small enough to meet the needs. We're working on expanding that, but the efficiencies we've had in that facility, I'm so proud of what we're able to accomplish in a very small footprint. Operations season is definitely key when you're making these programs. We intentionally do not have Saturdays. That is not a popular stance. So in order to maintain our program, we had to have contractors staff, and to have contractor staff on the weekend is very challenging. So our district's format is to have the contractor provide labor, and under that format, maintaining Saturday operations was not manageable financially. So our season has changed. It used to be April to September. Now it's June to September. We decreased it, increased it as we needed to by funds. We used to do 2 days of operations, we're down to 1 day of operation. You'll see how this trend happens, but we intentionally do not have Saturdays, and that is a cost and operational and a labor decision. Right there. So these are the list of the changes we've made. We used to be open 6 months out of the year, 2 days a week, and then as money became more difficult to dedicate to this program, we had to make adjustments. And this just shows you the trend of participation. These are the number of households that utilize our services and how the program has had to transition over the years to be sustainable. We are down to 4 months out of the year with 1 day a week, which is around 16 to 18 days. I think something that's important to understand on our program when you see our expenses is we expect our contractor to provide all of the labor. The only reworks labor there are the ones to survey the residents. Everything else, we want to make sure we have OSHA trained individuals to unload the material, to segregate the material. All of that responsibility falls on the contractor. That is a more expensive option. Not all districts have that opportunity, but that is one of the requirements we have from a risk assessment perspective, that we need to have licensed hazardous waste contractor dealing with this material, not us. They also provide all supplies. A lot of districts are able to get cost savings because they create their own, supply their own supplies. Everything is handled through our service agreement. Material acceptance is really big. You mentioned the unique material that you deal with. The ownership has to fall on the contractor. Again, this is per our risk assessment. This way, Reworks, Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority, does not own the material. So all of that responsibility falls on the contractor. That puts us in the best position, as well as they're the experts, not us. And so this was a risk that our board made sure any kind of contract we have for this material, the ownership falls on that, them, not us. And we just manage the other things. Cooking oil is other interesting waste streams. A lot of chicken. Anyway. So these are the pounds collected. Latex paint, I think when part of that consortium came together, it was a big decision on if we can maintain HHWs and take latex paint. We had to make a decision to stop taking it. Some districts might take it and dispose it. We took the option of educating on how residents can dispose of it. And it took down the volumes significantly and put us in more of an area where we can maintain that cost. So that decision was intentional. We didn't want to take material and then throw it out. We have an 80% recycle rate of what comes in. And latex paint, we educate residents to dry it out places.
And it's not even a hazardous waste, so you're paying a lot of money to manage that.
Perceived as a service, but our philosophy was if we're going to throw it out, why have residents bring it to it anyway? The green lines here just indicate contract changes. It shows you, boy, we had a really expensive year and had to make some decisions. But again, you can see, if you don't mind hitting the space bar again. Biggest decision here was we were operating at over 40 plus of our general operating budget was for this material, and we tried to get it down to 20. It is increasing. The cost of running HHWs, at least under our format, is increasing. It's around 23% of our general operating budget. We have all of those other responsibilities. HHW is very expensive. And Ernie did a great job presenting on the cost per ton. I just want to show you, at least on our level, some estimated annual tonnage we get from different programs we offer and the estimated cost per ton. We're over almost $2,000 a ton for HHW. So just to show you how it falls in line with other services that we provide our residents. And I always say day or night, the HHWC is a place to be. So, this is from 2002. It still looks like that every September. And that is all.
Thank you. We had a long conversation about this before, so I appreciate everybody doing that. At this point, I guess from an agency perspective, if we would like to make this a more robust discussion, kind of seeing how this group could help, we leave that in the agency staff's hands to ask us to do more.
And we'll know more too when we have the plan on the page with the director to have more direction in terms of, you know, what she would like us to do. So moving forward, we'll keep you updated on what happens. So go ahead.
I guess I was going to introduce the next presenter. So this is something that I brought to the group. Matt can't be with us here, but I saw a presentation about vinyl siding recycling. There's an association program that the Vinyl Siding Institute that is being piloted in Northeast Ohio. And it seems like it might have some things going on with it. So I thought this group could help. And maybe we can figure out how to support them and grow their operations in Ohio. So with that, I don't remember.
Eric Cotterman.
Eric, Eric, if you are on and would like to show us a little bit more about your program.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate the time to present to all of you today. I will not have my computer camera on. I'm traveling today, so my internet is kind of low, so I don't want to bog down the audio, which is vastly more important than the visual that you would see on the camera. So I'm Eric Cotterman. I represent Cornerstone Building Brands, which is one of the largest exterior manufacturers in the United States. VSI is Vinyl Siding Institute. It's a trade association which encompasses all the manufacturers of vinyl siding, raw material suppliers, both in the United States and in Canada. What we've done kind of over in the past, vinyl siding can really be broken up into three separate parts. You got your vinyl siding panels that everybody has seen. We also have polypropylene and polystyrene. For the Northeast Ohio Coalition, we are really focusing on vinyl siding panels as a whole. It's the majority of the the product that's sold and used in the United States. Vinyl siding is still the #1 residential exterior cladding in the United States, has been for years and still is. Now, inside of the manufacturing plants, we reuse, regrind all our vinyl siding scrap that we could produce throughout the day. And we either use that back into our panels or we use it for, accessory pieces or some other part of our industry, so it does not go to landfill. And we've been doing that for about 15 years now and continuing to go higher and higher, hopefully to get to 100% here before too long. And that includes palletization and different stuff that we go throughout our value chain. So the association itself is manufacturers of vinyl, other polymeric siding, and suppliers to the industry. And the association overall addresses several factors throughout our industry. One is regulatory issues. We work with building code officials through the RCA and national building codes to make sure that the products that's being installed, it stays on the house in areas like Florida where you have high wind loads and negative pressure situations. So that is a continuous part of the association as well. We also have a very successful, about 7,000 contractors that has been certified through the association as proper ways to install. And right now, the committee is doing our life cycle analysis project, so we can update our environmental product declarations here in the first quarter of next year. So the real part of the Northeast Coalition was how we've been doing it from a post-industrial standpoint, recycling and reusing, but how can we do it from a post-consumer standpoint? And so what we started to do, and a lot of people ask, why Northeast Ohio? Well, there's several reasons. This is the very first pilot program that has been introduced in the United States by the vinyl siding industry through VSI. And we chose Northeast Ohio for several reasons. From a manufacturing, from a membership standpoint of the association, it's the largest footprint that we have and a very diverse group, including, two-step, one-step distribution and into retails and do-it-yourself locations, independent lumberyards and stuff like that. And the second portion, why we kind of chose Northeast Ohio, is the current footprint of recycling members that could take the product as collection sites and then, resource that to that product. Sometimes recycled vinyl can be used back in our industry from a post-consumer standpoint. Most of the time it does not. Most of the time it gets sold to a independent third-party program that uses it for other products. For instance, PVC pipe or even road cones that you see out there on the interstate can be used with recycled vinyl. So this is more of a post-consumer application than anything else. So the pilot project itself, it became part of the board of directors key initiatives in 2021. So we started January of 2021, starting to realize, what kind of infrastructure is in place in Ohio, start talking through our value chains from distributors all the way down to our contractor base to determine what kind of viable options we had. So the pilot program was formed over the last 8 months. It is in its infancy. It started September 1st. So we're a little over a month into it now. And if you look at the pilot project, this is kind of our work plan. I won't go through all of this, but you'll have it as a resource. The goal is to increase post-consumer recycling in Cuyahoga County specifically, in surrounding areas of the Cuyahoga County area. I'll show you a list of participants in just a second. This pilot program will go from September 2021 until September of 2022. We don't have a lot of key performance indicators to share with you today, maybe at a later meeting. We're still working with those stakeholders to determine the best way of collecting the correct KPIs that we need without getting into proprietary information or techniques. Some of the ways that we're communicating this, obviously through social, through the VSI's platform, as well as all the manufacturers in the United States, has a large infrastructure base of contractors and contactors in that Northeast Ohio area. So they are filtering this information also through all of their information and through their contacts as well. You'll see this here. It's kind of a four-step process. The one of the biggest challenges we've had so far is the educational piece. Vinyl siding is a thermoplastic, so it can be recycled both, from a manufacturing and a post-consumer standpoint. Like a lot of people has said today, the logistics is definitely the largest complication we have in this, only because some of the collection sites and processors can take vinyl siding, but they can't take polyurethane, or they can't take polypropylene because of a different process. So working through all that is definitely a challenge. The biggest challenge is to educate the contractor base and the homeowner base that vinyl siding can actually be recycled. What we have noticed is through some surveys, and we're doing some more studies next year, is when the consumers think about vinyl siding, they think of it as a single-use plastic, like a plastic straw or plastic bag, and that's definitely not the case. So the educational piece is going to be instrumental into making this more successful than it already has been, and we'll continue to do that over the next coming months and years. So again, this is kind of a one-pager that we're giving to our contractor base. Obviously, you'll see the list in a second, but we have independent collection sites, and we also have collection sites at the distributor level. And most of the content that will be coming back for recycling are going to be coming through those contractor distributor standpoints. And so we have collection sites of the largest distributors in Cuyahoga County has agreed to be collection sites. So as the contractors are working on houses, bringing back that material, instead of it going into a landfill, there will be collection bins at the distributor points, which they go to every day anyways, that they will be able to put that material in and then go to the processor afterwards. So this is just a really nice single pager that tells them do's and don'ts about contamination, what can be in the bins, what can't be, that they can pass out to the contractors from a distributor standpoint. Here's your current participants. So right now we have 30 different participants, including, like I said, all manufacturers in the United States has signed off on this coalition, as well as some of the distributors like ABC Supply, Allside is also doing as well as Lowe's, Home Depot, and some retail locations as well. And I think we have about another 9 that's coming on board in the next 30 days. So current status, again, launched September the 1st. We almost have 60 members, including partial 60 members from a contracting standpoint base. That's going to grow as we continue on this. The next stage of this is going to be an outreach to the homeowners themselves, because as you know, vinyl siding has 2 components, has a contractor base, installed services, and then you have a secondary base of homeowners that will put it on themselves. So we need to get those collection points to the homeowners itself. So if they are putting vinyl siding on themselves, they know where those collection points is, and then they can drop that material off if they're not having a contractor involved. The biggest challenge, we only have 8 collection sites in the entire area of Cuyahoga County. So we're continuing to work on that to determine if there's any other collection sites that we could bring in more of a strategic plan. One of the biggest challenges that we have from a contractor standpoint is to get the bins on the job site, but getting it from the bins from the job site to the processor is a problem. So we've been in talks with Waste Management up in that area that's had some really great ideas. And some of the processors and collection points do have equipment to come get the bins. It's closing that logistical loop to the contractor, so they're not taking a lot of extra time and money out of their day to worry about logistics. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. We're going to also continue the communication plan from Only Social, email blasts, and all that information throughout the value chains. And again, like I said, we're continuing to decide on the metrics with those independent contractors to make sure that we can get a good KPI. The intention of this program, again, first program in the United States to do this, which I'm proud. I'm out of Ohio, just north of Dayton, so I'm proud it's in Ohio to start this off with. The plan is to expand this in different other regions, not only in Ohio, but in surrounding states and potentially nationally as well, depending on this. So it's an important catalyst for the industry. And with that, that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, there is, the Steve Sargent, is all the material in Cleveland now going to one processor? And does that processor just bail this material for you?
Yeah, so great question. So we actually have 2 processors already in place. We have one more coming on board, and it's a combination. So the logistical problem of this, they are bailing it in a lot of cases. One of the issues that we had was from a distributor standpoint. You know, some of these bins, some of these distributors can become very centralized, not large yards. And so to get the right bins in there and to get that to the processor has been kind of a one-on-one basis. But yes, I would say 90% of this is bailing and then transporting.
Thank you.
Eric, this is Mike Deneen. I appreciate the presentation here. Maybe we can revisit this after you've got a few more months under your belt and learn a little bit more about it, how it may or may not be able to be assisted. One thing I will say, and I'm sure members of your group have said it before, if you were on here early enough, we talked about the grants program. The grants program is funded by construction and demolition debris fees. They tend to like programs that ask for money for the recycling of construction demolition debris, which your material would be included in. So just as an FYI, that's a very good resource, especially for something like what you're talking about here. The collection infrastructure may be a good piece of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is kind of a new thing that we put on the agenda, is to open up a public comment period to better manage Mac's business. So that if we had guests online who wanted to address council, that we would give them time at the end just so we didn't get interrupted. We don't have many guests online, and I don't believe anybody has chatted in that they want to speak.
Okay. We took care of the legislative report already.
I just have one more thing.
Yes, sir.
So obviously our December meeting we canceled. So we'll need to decide for next year, are we going to start meeting again in February, which I think would have been our next bi-monthly meeting, and continue with the bi-monthly schedule? Is that okay? So I'll come up with the schedule and send it out.
Yep.
And then in terms of an agenda for that, we've got several things that we can talk about. One may be continuing our discussion about the organics. If Jason, we challenge Jason to come up with a type of a program, we may be able to talk about that. We may have some follow-up on the subcommittee's recommendations to the director. We'll have a better idea of our direction internally for the HHW program. We can provide an update. I was thinking that if we might invite another solid waste district come in and present. We had been trying to do that, but I don't know if that's something MAC is interested in hearing from others. And we can look at other associations as well that we've not heard from. So those are just some ideas on my plate. If those are things that you guys are interested in, then we'll reach out and find out more about it. And in the meantime, if you have something you'd like to see on the agenda, let us know.
Any comments for the good of the order? Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. Appreciate the effort, the time. I know it's hard for some people to drive down, but we're required to be here in person, so I appreciate you doing that. I got lucky and just happen to live in the right spot. So with that, can we leave?
I move to adjourn. Second.
So adjourned.
If any of you are sticking around Columbus to do other business, Columbus does have an indoor mask mandate. So just be aware that if you're going to go in other places, CCO is not enforcing it, but other places probably will.